Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome to the Booms and Bust Show. My name is Jonathan Davis. It is later in the afternoon on Monday, the 12th of March 2018. Normally I'd be recording this show significantly earlier on a Monday, but I've just sat at my desk all day trying to piece together what's been going on this weekend, and it's taken me longer than I expected, as well as, of course, my normal day-to-day work things that I have to do. The Booms and Bust Show, I originally set up largely to talk about markets and longer term investing, some speculation, economics, what's going on in the world. Are we moving forward? Are we going backwards? Are we in deflation? Are we in inflation? And I also wanted to talk a bit about politics from a libertarian point of view, and not just free markets, but free speech, capitalism, and because you could call it a belief, or you could call it it's night follows day. If you have free markets, then by dint of that, you then have free speech, you have equal opportunity, you have a sense of society where you want to look after your fellow man, woman and child, but you do it from a voluntary point of view as opposed to conscripted to do what they require you to do by force or by the laws that they've created. And I've been presenting the show now for over a year. I started in early March 2017, and it's now clearly over a year. Of course, there's been breaks for holidays and whatnot, but I think we're now on to show 47. And I tweeted earlier this morning, how depressed I've been all weekend, just by learning about what's going on. First, we heard about a free speech campaigner, a journalist, who, with his camera woman and I think one or two others, I'm not 100% sure, they were out in the streets, I think in London, doing their thing. He was doing a piece to camera, or they were getting a coffee or whatever, but that was what they were in the process of doing on Saturday, when a group of masked so-called Antifa, I mean, it's just unbelievable that they dare to call themselves anti-fascist, violent thugs, attacked them physically. And we've seen some of the video evidence in social media. And no doubt these thugs, these anti-free speakers who follow on from communism and fascism that we've seen over the last 100 years, no doubt they had expensive smartphones in their pockets. No doubt they had big bank balances. No doubt they come from very well-to-do families, and probably they even had private educations. And they believe that they have a right to violently attack people going about their business, doing journalism work. That was unbelievable to see on Twitter. And then on Sunday, the Sunday Mirror, probably the third largest selling newspaper in the country, did a massive spread on yet another mass rape by Muslims. This time in Telford. Potentially up to 1,000 girls mass raped, bullied, groomed, made addicted into drugs and booze. And we'll be talking about that in the show later. And it's just frightening. It's just absolutely frightening. And then the next piece of news we get is that 2 free speakers, one from Austria in the EU, one from America, they happen to be partners in life, but that's their nationalities. They arrived by plane, an EasyJet plane, in order to, on the one hand, speak at a Young Independence, which is the under-30s arm of UKIP, about free speech, and also to go onto Speaker's Corner in Hyde Park and talk about free speech. The other one came to interview the first guy I talked about who was attacked on the street, and they both were not allowed into my country, the United Kingdom. And then later, was it last night or this morning, we hear of another American journalist who was not allowed into my country. 3 conservative, free speech campaigning journalists were not allowed into the United Kingdom. You might want to just pause this podcast for a few moments and consider that. Let me reiterate. 3 free speech campaigning journalists from first world Western nations who, as far as I know, are not criminals and have never uttered violent statements, racist statements, or anything ridiculous like that. They were not allowed to enter this country to campaign for free speech. That is what this show is largely about. Now, to start the show, I'm going to present to you a 2.5 minute discussion which took place at the arrivals door or walkway at, I think, Vienna airport, where the Austrian and the first American, who, as I say, are life partners, were received to rapturous applause by free speakers, and this is the welcome that they received.
3 days ago, Brittany Pettibone, who's a conservative journalist and commentator from America, and her partner Martin Insellner, who's from Austria, flew into the UK. One of them was coming to give a speech on the topic of free speech. When they landed, they were held, arrested and detained and put in a detention centre for the last 3 days. They're currently being deported, and any minute now they'll be coming walking out these gates in Vienna airport. One of the reasons I understand that's been given is the fact that they were coming to interview me. I'm here to report back to the British public so that you understand the current state of affairs and that freedom of speech is completely under attack. That report will be coming soon. Hey, how you doing? Welcome home. Welcome home, Brittany. Welcome home, mine. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
You've got quite a reception waiting for you.
Yeah, wow. Okay, we didn't expect that. Yeah. Wow, amazing.
Great, can I ask, how are you feeling?
I'm just thankful for all the people who supported us, everybody who tweeted, people who made demonstrations in front of embassies, and especially the brave guys who went to speech corners today. They're the backbone of our resistance.
Can you briefly tell us what happened?
Yeah, so it was separate for us. So he was denied entry for a different reason. I was denied entry because I said I was going to interview you. And so I have the immigration statement, I'll show it to you, and it says, you're denied entry because you want to interview far-right activist, far-right extremist, Tommy Robinson, who incites racial hatred. And so Martin actually mentioned, he was like, why don't you let her through and she can do her interviews and I won't go, and then the event won't take place, so it'll be fine. They're like, her situation's worse because she's going to interview Tommy. Yeah.
We wanted to give a speech about freedom of speech there, but they wouldn't even let us go to a speaker's corner. And I think sometimes a speech you don't give speaks more.
This is beautiful. A beautiful reception.
Amazing.
Great.
Welcome home. Welcome
Thank
home.
you much.
Thanks, Tommy.
Thanks, man. What a beautiful response. The song they're singing is about freedom of thought and freedom of speech. The banner reads free thinking. These people have come out to defend free speech. He's been deported from our country. Do you know what I feel? I feel embarrassed again in my country. I feel embarrassed of our government. I'm going to sit down now with Martin and with Brittany. I'm going to bring you a full report, a detailed interview, find exactly what happened with this situation.
Now remember, those two young people were detained by the United Kingdom border authorities for 3 days in, no doubt, holding cells, and the young man in particular, he was in a cell with lots of other Muslim immigrants, and given he's a free speaker, can you imagine what could have happened to him if the other people in the cell had got to find out who he was? I mean, this is the disdain that the UK government showed to conservative libertarians. And now I'm going to play you the interview that the English chap you heard there by the name of Tommy Robinson did with them later that day, which in fact was I presume it was either yesterday or it might even have been today. So it's the 11th or 12th of March. Clearly, Tommy flew out to Vienna to interview them. That's really excellent. And here is the 15-minute interview. Go and get yourself a cup of coffee, cup of tea, and listen intently. There are times when Martin's voice in particular goes a little bit quiet, bearing in mind he's not a natural English speaker. And so many excellent points about freedoms being taken away and freedoms being given to fascists, to anti-freedom people. So many great points come out in this interview.
So I'm sat here with Martin Sellner, who is the spokesman for Generation Identity, and I'm also sat with Brittany Pettibone, who is his partner, who is a conservative commentator and journalist who's from America. They tried to travel to the UK 3 days ago. Upon their arrival, they were held, they were arrested, and they've spent 3 days in a detention centre before being deported. I want to sit here now and find out exactly what happened during that ordeal and the reasons why. First of all, how are you?
Good now. Happy to be back in Austria.
Absolutely, we're fine.
So just explain to me what exactly happened from the minute you landed.
Yeah, we landed, and at passport control I was halted. The guy asked me if I've ever was halted before, and he said it's just a matter of a few minutes. But this was the beginning of a 3 days detention, actually. They found Brittany, we were separated, we were not allowed to look on our phones, not allowed to talk, and then they put us on hold there. They searched our bags, and we spent the whole day there, and then in the night they brought us into a detention center where we had to stay till Sunday, separated, unable to communicate it, and actually treated like criminals.
First time you saw each other then was when you were released?
At the detention center, there was a time you could go to there was like a visitor center, so they brought us separately and we were able to meet and talk, and then we had to return to our quarters. So this was the time.
But the first time we could talk in private again was in the plane back from the UK, and sometimes I really didn't know where she was, she didn't know where I was, and we were in cells locked up with criminals who were being deported to Eastern Europe, illegals who came to the country illegally, and both of us were handcuffed while we were dragged over the airport. So it was really an interesting experience. Yeah.
Because I walked through the main part of the airport, where everyone is getting their luggage and stuff, and everyone looking at me like you're some kind of criminal. It was embarrassing. I just started laughing.
And what was your intention for coming to the UK?
Yeah.
Originally?
My crime.
What is the crime?
Brinda's crime was that she wanted to talk with you, and my crime is that I wanted to speak at Speaker's Corner, and even there's a backstory to it, because I was invited the second time by Young Independents, the youth movement of UKIP, to give a speech about freedom of speech at one of their events. And both times they lost the venue because of pressure of Antifa and
Threats against the venue.
Threats against them, threats of violence. And then I remember, because my mother, when I was young, told me about this place in London, Speaker's Corner, where everybody can just take a crate, go, put it on the chair, and then start speaking. And I thought, okay, no, I will not cancel my flying tickets. We'll go there and I'll speak at Speaker's Corner, give my speech there.
And that's your crime?
That was my crime.
Mm-hmm. So that's your crime. And your crime is separate, because obviously that's your intention, and they separated you both and asked you your intentions for coming to the UK.
Yes. So I have the official statement here. I'll just read the sentence, which it involves you. Yep. So they say, you have asked for leave to enter the United Kingdom as a visitor for 5 days, but as you stated in your interview, I have reasons to believe that you are seeking admission to the United Kingdom to interview Tommy Robinson, a far-right leader whose materials and speeches incite racial hatred. So that said, I just want to add really quick, Martin said, okay, you can detain me, I won't give my speech, the event won't happen, so let Brittany go through and she can go and conduct her interviews because she has other work there, she was just going to film my speech. They said, no, actually your case is worse because you want to interview Tommy Robinson. So they were completely just up in arms about you.
I've never been done for any of those crimes. I've never committed any of those crimes, but what message does that send? That a journalist can't come into our country to interview someone?
The first thing that crossed my mind is, wow, this reads a lot like political discrimination. Like, on what ground? I was like thinking, okay, he's not a criminal. You're a free man walking around the UK. Anyone should be able to talk to you. Why can't I go in? Like, it's not like I want to go to a prison or something to interview someone. It was just really bizarre. It felt like they were saying, you're right wing, that's not allowed. You're conservative, it's not allowed, so you're not welcome here.
I think also the decision was already made before.
Yeah,
They were
we
searching
were
for
on a
reasons.
list.
The decision was made. You was on a list before you come into the
Our
country.
passports right when it
So when you put it flagged up.
yeah.
I think it's very telling that the UK is opening its borders for all kinds of people, letting radical Islam grow within its borders, but is shutting its borders down for dissenting opinions. That's very telling, very revealing, and I think it's actually very embarrassing for a modern Western democracy.
What if I tell you? In fact, I haven't got time to sit here. I could give you thousands of examples, but I'll pick one. Yusuf Sagbar. He was a Moroccan who was living in Italy. He tried to go and fight for ISIS. He told the border staff clearly he wanted to become a terrorist. Those details and that information was passed on to the European countries. It was passed on to the British government, and he was then allowed to come to London, move to London. He wasn't stopped. He went on to commit a terrorist attack at London Bridge, killing 8 people and injuring 48. So what is it about yourselves that's more dangerous than him? How can we make sense of that?
I think it's crazy, it's telling, it's embarrassing that the British government wants to protect its citizens from dangerous thoughts more than from terrorist strikes, trucks and bombs. They're afraid of dissenting opinions.
And do you think, I've asked you a question, what do you think their fear was in your presence here? Do you think they were scared of you or what you were going to say? Or do you think they're scared of the reaction?
I think it's a little bit of both, because the thing is, we've never incited any kind of violence, ever. We simply want to go places and speak. We're not like chasing after, crazy things happening. We just wanted to go and speak peacefully. And we stated that in a video before we went to the UK. What troubles me is the fact that they don't ever pursue Antifa, who set up a counter protest on Facebook. Then many of them were tweeting for over the course of several days about how they're going to shut this down by any means necessary. And the fact that the UK patrols online hate speech so often, and yet they don't go after Antifa, who are threatening all this kinds of violence, and they persecute people who just want to go speak freely and peacefully, it's mind-boggling. And it should be very eye-opening. I don't understand why people in the UK will stand for it.
So they said to you as one of the reasons was that they believe that your presence here could inflame tensions.
Exactly. So the Antifa got exactly what they wanted. The state just acted as a puppet for Antifa, bending to their will. I mean, with such a government, who needs Antifa? Because Antifa wanted to shut my protest down, wanted me to prevent me from going to Speaker's Corner, and the state exactly acted like this. And I think it's losing its mask more and more and showing its totalitarian face. And you see how multiculturalism is connected to totalitarianism. Because if you want to proceed a policy that is disliked by the silent majority, you need to come up with more and more measures to shut them down, to shut free speech down. So I think it's linked to each other, and you see at the UK how Western democracies are turning more and more totalitarian as they're becoming Islamicized and turning more multicultural.
Has your view changed from what you thought of Britain 3 days ago?
Yes.
To now landing back here in your home?
Absolutely. It's one thing to read all the articles about there's no freedom of speech in the UK, or people are getting arrested for, expressing their opinions that might be considered wrong-think. But it's quite another to actually experience it and to be in that situation. It's just like for us, of course, we're in this and we always were, and we'd never give up regardless. But after experiencing that, there's no way you can go back. I spoke to several of the Border Patrol people and who were secretly right-wing, but obviously they were very kind to us, but they're like, we can't do anything. We don't want to lose our jobs. But one of them said to me, the British people, we just suffer in silence. It's just how we are. And I said to him that, okay, if you have cancer, you don't suffer in silence because it's only going to get worse. You have to act in some way or you're going to incrementally lose your freedoms. One day it's going to affect you, whether or not it is right now, one day it will. So you might as well stand up now because you're only losing every day. You're not gaining anything. Suffering in silence, it's not the option.
If it wasn't for this interview here, if it wasn't for alternative media, I don't think the British public would be aware that a couple like yourself have been detained, separated, imprisoned, and then deported because you're going to speak about free speech. Because you're going to put your ideas across and your opinions.
And that's why we're so grateful for everyone. There were so many people that were tweeting about this, raising...
Every tweet, article, there were demonstrations in Hungary, in Germany, everywhere.
And I'm especially grateful and proud of the people who went to Speaker's Corner.
Yeah.
So you were supposed to speak today at Speaker's Corner. They held you. This is the thing that gets me. Is it seems like they punished you as well. They wanted to teach you a lesson because they could have turned you straight around on a flight and deported you on Friday.
I even called them and I wanted to get a flight from Heathrow, and they just said no, it's not possible because of bureaucratic reasons. I think also that to put Brittany in detention, they just wanted to give a message. They wanted to teach the whole public message that happens when you speak your mind.
What infuriated
They hope
me,
you give up as well. I've been in this situation.
But we won't give up. And I think it's what they want is silence. They want to silence everybody. And you know, Brittany and me, we are sitting in those cells, but every British citizen is also sitting in a cell of fear and silence, suffering and silence.
They're afraid.
And we need to get them to come out of these cells. And all the people who went to Speaker's Corner, all the people who showed their faces, they show that freedom of speech is still alive in the UK.
Something that particularly infuriated me is the fact that when we arrived at the detention center, the warden met with us, or the manager, whatever you call him, he met with us individually and was like, don't discuss anything political about maybe about who you are, what you believe here, because we want to avoid, any disturbances. And that got me thinking, if there's even the slightest risk that we can be in danger here, why not let us fly out Saturday? Because they're saying you have to fly out on the same airline from which you arrived, but which was EasyJet, and there were EasyJet flights out from Heathrow. And we were staying in a detention center very close to Heathrow. So why not let us fly out Saturday? Why put us at that risk, even if it's small?
Which is a risk.
Yeah.
Because once people know that you speak about Islam, for example, in a detention center, what nationality were the people you had it up with and celled up with?
Most people were black of Arab nationality. Many of them also Muslims. So I think if the word spread, if I would have stayed there a few more days, there would actually really be a real danger.
A risk.
Absolutely.
So your lives have been put in danger by the British state.
In a way it was, but I also have to say that the border forces, the normal policemen, they were very friendly. A lot of them were sympathizing with us. It was also a very British thing, like even when they put on your handcuffs and search your body, it was very polite. I think it's only British people can do it like that. What you're really complaining and what we are upset about is the decision of the government, but I think it will backfire because they wanted to keep it silent, they want to keep it under the blanket, and they want no tensions to rise, and now they have it back because a lot of people are upset now. And they want to know what I was prevented to talk about. Well,
I've seen this for years, and what the British government have attempted to do is obviously silence you. And what I believe the reason for that is because they are worried about the reaction. They're always, so basically they'll take away your rights, like they take away my rights, because of a violent opposition. Now, they can stop you travelling to the UK. They can't stop me. That's my country. Mm-hmm. If you had a speech prepared, did you have a speech? Have you got a speech prepared?
I had a speech prepared for the venue, and then I prepared another one for Speaker's Corner, and actually I rewrote it in my prison cell. And the thing is, I even have it with me now. Have you got that
speech?
Yeah. And the thing is,
if I take this speech, this is the backfiring from the government and the police and what they're attempting to do. Speaker's Corner has a 300-year history from some of the most controversial figures, from Karl Marx to George Orwell.
Vladimir Lenin.
But yeah, everyone is allowed to speak there. It's part of our country's history. And the fact that they're trying to stop it, and the fact that we see Islamic preachers coming in, every week, then I'll deliver this speech on your behalf. I'll read this speech out. So the government haven't won, because I can't sit there and think that you're letting them win. If they stop you giving the speech, then they win. Mm-hmm. So at 3:00 on Sunday, I'll ask anyone who values freedom of speech, whether it be in Britain or in Europe, come along and support free speech in Sunday at Speaker's Corner, 3 p.m. That's what I want to do.
Thank you very much, Tom.
Yeah. Also, I just want to add that the forbidden interview that I was due to do with you, yes, we're going to actually go through with that. So you can look forward to that on my channel if you're interested. The one that the band interview. It will be happening.
It will be happening. And if I ask you, just to end on, what's next for you two?
First of all, thank you very much for doing this. Yeah. It's a sign that they can stop the speaker, but they cannot stop the speech. They can stop persons, but they cannot stop ideas from entering countries. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to do activism and forcing them to reveal themselves as totalitarianistic or accepting us in the whole freedom of speech and democracy. We want to change it.
There's been absolutely no course correct. It's basically just motivated us more, and it made us see how much more important it is to just keep doing what we're doing. And obviously there will probably be plenty more of this, but you have to forge on, and hopefully more and more people will start to do the same.
And because a lot of people that keep demanding it to the UK and to the government, I can say, I'll be back.
And I'll just say as well that I think it has, because I've read the comments, and I've read comments of people who didn't know who you were, and people saying, "Why did our grandfathers die? Why did our families die? They died for free speech. They died for people's rights, and they're taking them away." And that's the reality. Back home in Britain, we're losing our rights. We live in a post-free speech era. I understand that. What I need the British public to understand is that, and instances like this will really bring it home when they see the people that they're stopping coming in. Look who's being stopped from coming into our country. And then look who's being allowed in. Thank you. And
thank you, Tom.
I wish you luck. I just want to say a personal thank you to every single person who supported me. I couldn't bring you these videos without your support. We have no big funders, no big donators. So this is literally by you, for you. So I want to say a personal thank you. And if anyone else wants to keep up to date with what we're doing, we've got plenty of exciting things coming up now. I've gone independent. You can do so at tommyrobinson.online. Thank you.
You rarely encounter two more articulate and passionate young people than Martin and Brittany. I've been following this story all weekend, as you can tell, and when I then think of what's her name, Lauren Southern, who is the other American who was not allowed into the UK, I've never heard of this before. I'm a reasonably well-informed individual. I never read anything in the mainstream press. I just never read a newspaper, literally never. I never watch the TV news, literally never. I hardly ever spend more than 5 or 10 minutes watching a political program, and even then, if I do, it's probably going to be Andrew Neil's shows, or maybe 5 minutes on a Sunday morning as I'm putting my tennis gear on to go and play tennis. In other words, I'm not really that interested. I only ever hear the so-called radio news for the 2 minutes on the hour. I listen generally to music stations, so I'm not into news that the mainstream media puts out, and yet I'm reasonably well informed. How is that possible? Because of a thing called Twitter, and I follow clued in people, and from that I get the news that I believe matters, or certainly at least matters to me. And I just wonder, listener, quite seriously, if the middle of March 2018 is a pivotal moment in history. You know, a pivotal moment in the Industrial Revolution was when the Luddites rose up against the the farm equipment that was coming out. I don't actually know. I mean, you probably think, what a thick idiot, how can he not know what the Luddites were complaining about? But ultimately they were complaining about mechanization, whether it was farms or factories. I don't really know, but I just know that the Luddites were complaining about technology. They were complaining about progress. And of course I get their point. But that's what a Luddite is. When a Luddite complains or campaigns against ultimately progress, well, you can't stand in the way of it. It's going to happen. And then when the, was it the Tolpuddle workers, the Tolpuddle martyrs, they fought against gruesome working conditions, and they became martyrs, the Tolpuddle martyrs, the start of socialism. And I totally get it. Of course I do. My birthday is May the 1st, and right across the world, people celebrate May Day. And last year, I talked about the origins of May Day, and incidentally, the origins are 5,000 or so miles away from Russia and the Eastern Europe. So, the socialists have sold you this myth that May Day celebrations come about something to do with communism and 1917. No, it started in Chicago. The socialists, the uprising of the workers against the dreadful working conditions, I totally get it. However, that also was a pivotal moment in history. And goodness knows how many pivotal moments there were in the 20th century. How about the suffragette putting herself under the galloping horse in front of the king? How about Chamberlain returns from Munich in 1938 and declares peace in our time? How about when now Sir Tim Berners-Lee at CERN invented the internet? And so on. Google, Facebook, Twitter, Amazon, Uber, Airbnb. Pivotal moments in history. Margaret Thatcher re-elected in 1983. Re-elected in 1987. How about Alan Greenspan, the then Federal Reserve Chairman, bailing out long-term capital management in the late 1990s. These were pivotal moments in history which changed the future. And I seriously wonder if this weekend has been a pivotal moment in history. When the British government, in other words, Amber Rudd, the Home Secretary, because don't tell me that some trumped up bureaucrat has made this decision on his or her own. I cannot imagine free speakers wanting to come into this country to do free speech. I cannot imagine it didn't go all the way up to the Home Secretary of this country. This is not about Islam. This is not about conspiracy theories. This is about Amber Rudd, the United Kingdom Home Secretary, detaining free people, not criminals, coming to my country to spread the word about free speech peacefully. I mean, This is like Mahatma Gandhi. Think about young Martin's accent. I wonder how many of you had the same thought as I did. What do we associate his accent with? Well, I associate it with 1930s Nazism, actually. The crowd at the airport singing. Did it make you think of Nazi rallies? Because it actually did me. They had a banner in Vienna, the Anschluss. They had a banner which said in German, "Free speech lives here." We, the people of Britain, we are the fascists, or at least our political leaders are. And this may well be a major pivotal moment in history when so many folk across this country and across the world, the people who believe in free speech, democracy, in freedom, when more and more actually start getting the point. How does it relate, however, to Islam? Well, if you are listening to this show, having gone to the Twitter account at Booms Busts Show, click on the pinned tweet. Actually go to the account at Booms Busts Show, click on the top tweet, the pinned tweet, and then scroll down and you'll start seeing some photos. The first photo you'll see on the left-hand side, it's a report from The Independent. It says more than 400 British people who went out to fight with ISIS have returned to the UK. And the right-hand side is a photo. The dark-haired girl is Brittany. The left-haired woman is Lauren Southern. Apparently, one of these images constitutes a threat to the British government. I'll give you a clue. It's not the 400 ISIS jihadists. Now, you might also have heard that last week two anti-Islamist politicians, Paul Golding and Jada Franson, neither of them I would trust. I wouldn't touch them with a barge pole. I wouldn't trust them further than I could throw them, because I've heard her on the radio. I mean, she gave some nonsense about Donald Trump, and Nick Ferrari asked her, so is Donald Trump being in touch? And her response was pathetic. It was, I cannot comment on that. Oh, behave, woman. But they were jailed last week. They were jailed last week because they stated in public what Islamists are doing. The sentencing judge said, quote, "Their words and actions demonstrated hostility towards Muslims and the Muslim faith," unquote. Look at the photo. Islamists with posters, "Islam will dominate the world." What does that say? "Muslims rise against the Crusaders. Need for Allah's law, not man-made law." How come that's not criminal? To question our laws. Another poster, "Jihad to defend the Muslims." Don't the police know what the word jihad means? And those two individuals, Jada Franson and Paul Golding, were jailed. Now, you'll also see a photo of the letter that the Home Office, Amber Rudd's people, wrote to Lauren Southern. What does it say? "I've reasons to believe that you're seeking admission to the United Kingdom to interview Tommy Robinson, a far-right leader whose materials and speeches incite racial hatred." A far-right leader. What does far-right mean? Far-right means fascism. Tommy Robinson is no more fascist than you or me. Whose materials and speeches incite racial hatred because he states facts and he promotes free speech. I don't hate Islamists because they follow Islam. I hate Islamists because of the criminal acts that so many of them have been performing for decades. I believe that your planned activities whilst in the United Kingdom bear a serious threat to the fundamental interests of society and are likely to incite tensions between local communities in the United Kingdom. This is what our Home Office wrote to Lauren Southern. Excuse me, aren't there groups in the United Kingdom who are actually inciting tensions between local communities? Actually doing it? And incidentally, if you think you know Tommy Robinson, and if you've heard that he's a criminal, as far as I know, when he was younger, he did something dodgy about a mortgage, and he was prosecuted for it and sentenced. Tommy Robinson has never been prosecuted for anything political. Think about that. They've been hounding him for years, but they haven't got a thing on him because there is nothing on him. And if he is far right and inciting this, that and the other, then go and bloomin' well prosecute him. But that shows you the sheer hypocrisy of our government. They've got nothing on him, and yet they cite him as the reason why she can't come in to our country. He is a libertarian. So there's unproven allegation of racism. Apparently that is now grounds to block anyone from entering my country. They asked her views against or about Muslims. Are they going to ask every single Muslim that comes into this country about their attitude towards Jews? Are they hell? An American citizen is detained for 3 days in the UK because she was going to interview Tommy Robinson and because she has a wrong political outlook. How is this not on every single major news outlet? How is it not being outraged in the media? This is an international incident. Now, this may be how free speech dies if we leave it at that. This is the time, listener, when you need to take action. Apart from anything, Tommy will be giving Martin Sellner's speech this Sunday, the 18th of March, at Speaker's Corner at 3 o'clock. Britain's Labour Party vows to ban Islamophobia. And I'm looking at a demonstration by Islamists, and they're holding up a poster which says, "Don't vote. None have the right to legislate except Allah." How come that isn't anti-democracy? Government Minister Sajid Javid has tweeted disturbing reports of Islamophobic letters in the Midlands. Let me be clear. British Muslims should be able to live without fear of abuse and attack, and we will do everything in our power to tackle those who spread hate. So what are you doing about the Muslims, Mr. Javid? Sadiq Khan, the London mayor, warns Silicon Valley on hate speech and fake news. So basically, Sadiq Khan and Amber Rudd, the Tory Home Secretary, are going to shut down conservatives and free speakers on the internet. The Conservative Party is so conservative that they'll detain you and deport you for being a conservative. There's a photo of Gary Swain, who's standing for Labour. This is a chap who tweeted, "The Rochdale girls were permanently pissed and never at home. Parents should grow the hell up." There is a photo of a leaflet from the Department of Work and Pensions. It says, "Coming from abroad and getting your benefits." We've got a new mass rape announced in Telford. We had Rochdale, we had Rotherham, we've had Glasgow. Nothing is done for years. Horrific abuse. Hundreds of victims failed. A council commissioned report told us social workers knew of the child sex crimes in the 1990s. They did nothing. 20 years later, whistleblowing police chaplain Keith Osmond Smith was suspended after telling the press. Social workers reportedly knew of the abuse, which saw girls as young as 11 targeted from the 1990s. Police took 10 years to launch an investigation, and the authorities failed to keep tabs on suspects and perpetrators from the Muslim community, fearing racism accusations. No, they didn't. They feared losing votes. Council staff viewed the abused children as prostitutes. Authorities failed to keep details of abusers. Police failed to investigate one recent case, 5 times, until the MP intervened. Um, 150-page report. A second whistleblower in a charity helping sex abuse victims was forced to leave her post after speaking out. Now, notes of her disciplinary meetings show officials admitted she had done nothing wrong but feared funding from authorities would be cut if she kept expressing views about the lack of action over the scandal by the council and the police. The majority of Access Counselling's funding comes from West Mercia Police. Becky Watson, 13 years old, died in a car crash described as a prank after she suffered 2 years of abuse by a Muslim grooming gang. Her mother, Torrin Watson, said she repeatedly told police Becky was being abused and she named suspects. Quote, "Girls like Becky were treated like criminals," unquote. Vicky Round was abused by a gang that got her hooked on crack at the age of 12 and heroin at the age of 14. She was dead by 20. Police investigation Operation Chalice identified at least 100 victims between 2007 and 2009, 10 or 20 years after it was going on. 9 perpetrators only were jailed. The case is now closed. The police themselves said there can be as many as 200 perpetrators. One 14-year-old victim whose phone number was sold to paedophiles said the following, quote, "I hated what was happening and my abusers made my skin crawl. But I was told that if I said a word to anyone, they'd come for my little sisters and tell my mum I was a prostitute. Night after night, I was forced to have sex with multiple men in disgusting takeaways and filthy houses. I must have been getting the morning after pill from a local clinic at least twice a week, but no one asked any questions of me." Unquote. She was a child. Quote, "I fell pregnant twice and had 2 abortions. Hours after my second termination, I was taken by one of my abusers to be raped by more men. The worst moment came just after my 16th birthday. The worst moment? The worst moment? When I was drugged and gang raped by 5 men. Days later, the ringleader turned up at my house and told me he'd burn it down if I breathed a word of what had happened." Unquote. I've got a daughter of 11 and a daughter of 13. If you know anything about what's going on, which it still will be, you need to tell whoever you need to tell. You need to do whatever you need to do. Up to 1,000 young girls have been victimised over the years. Authorities failed to keep details. Rotherham, Rochdale, Glasgow, Telford. Why do they keep saying Asian? There's a chart of rape convictions per 100,000 population per country of origin, which took place in Denmark. In Denmark, it's 0.7 conviction per 100,000 if you're Danish. If you come from Afghanistan in Denmark, it's 18. If you come from Somalia, it's 25. Lebanon, Iraq and Iran, it's over 10. If you come from Denmark, it's less than 1. They're not Asian. I've had an hour. I've got more to say, but it's an hour-long show. I'll see you another time.